What was it about the 1970s? When it comes to documentary films, that decade produced some of the weirdest, and audiences couldn't get enough of them. Let's lower the lights and enter the alternate world of weird cinema here on Things Visible and Invisible. Gary, the last time we spoke, we had a very interesting conversation about our childhood, maybe. Weirdumentary on television and in the movie theatres was part of growing up. Suddenly the world seemed a stranger and a darker and a more mysterious place from the 1970s onwards. However, what do you think, if any, was the lasting legacy of this genre which suddenly escaped onto the big and small screen in the 1970s?
Well, that's a fascinating question. I think there were two major outcomes that we still see. Coming at this more as I do from a film studies perspective rather than someone say studying the paranormal. What I would suggest is that one, it had an immediate and profound impact on feature filmmakers, fictional filmmakers. The kinds of stories that were told by Eric von Daniken, the stories told by Weirdumentary, these are the stories that were told in, for example, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg, the John Carpenter film The Thing from the early 80s. One character even references Chariots of the Gods outwardly and says, Chariots of the Gods, the aliens practically own South America, his dialogue paraphrased. Um, I think even a film as recent as Prometheus, the Ridley Scott film, it is a story as part of the Alien series, but it's a story of scientists finding cave drawings that suggest alien contact eons ago, and even a map to where they're at. That map leads a spaceship of characters in the film to the aliens' location. So I think that fictional filmmakers picked up on this. I think so, and I think it had a particular impact on the science fiction genre, which became also so big in our childhoods, the second half of the 70s, Star Wars and so forth. Some horror films as well. People continue to make films about Bigfoot and so forth. So I think that's one outcome. The other outcome is these topics are so fascinating that they continue more now than even in the 70s. William Shatner's first Weirdumentary was a feature film documentary, Weirdumentary, called Mysteries of the Gods in 1976. It was one of these films, one of these topics. As we speak now in 2025, William Shatner in his 90s is hosting a new program called The Unexplained, streaming on television that explores these very topics. So everything from streaming services, kind of channels devoted to documentary in America, Discovery Channel, to individual YouTube channels, these subjects just don't go away. I think they're akin to a kind of a modern mythology, rather than the Cyclops and Odysseus or tales of Roman and Greek gods. These actually have, in a way, become our modern mythology. And there's a lot more product out there, media product of these subjects now than there were in the 70s, the golden age, when they really became what I talk about in my book.
Yeah, although they kind of dominated sort of the documentary genre in the 1970s, or certainly an aspect of it, um, they, in terms of documentaries have gone in all sorts of different directions, and it's very hard to talk about them as a single genre. Yeah. But would it be fair to say, Gary, that it was a phase that documentarians went through, that after that it kind of went into the ghetto of, fringe interests, the true believers. It was less, the mainstream element became Hollywood. The non-mainstream, the specialist element became those, as I say, people who were already really into this sort of stuff.
I couldn't agree more. These films in the 70s were very popular. Even at the time, though, major scientists, major documentarians of other styles, the people of the era, the verite, direct address documentarians, the likes of the Maysles brothers, D.A. Pennebaker, Les Blanc avoided these subjects even at the time. Critics at Variety, Hollywood Reporter had disdain for them generally. But the audiences embraced them, and it was a major documentary movement. In terms of documentary subgenres, though, the different types of documentaries, it very much hit the ghetto quickly. It's interesting to remember that Chariots of the Gods, the film, in 1970, it was released. In 1971, the Academy Awards nominated it for Best Documentary. It didn't win, but to be nominated for such a subject and for such a type of film, I think is fascinating that that happened, certainly unexpected in its own way. Those kinds of accolades, getting an Academy Award nomination, those disappeared almost overnight. I mean, by 71, too, as we go further and further into the 70s and beyond, these films became, yes, relegated to kind of the gutter. They were seen more to be, well, certainly some critics thought they were mainly for kids or people of perhaps lower intelligence, frankly. Sometimes critics had, I love the films, but I think some critics had real disdain for them. But it's an era of documentary that there's never been a book written about it before mine. One reason may be that they certainly don't have the prestige of anybody, anything from, say, Flaherty with his own problems or Grierson through the likes of, say, somebody like Errol Morris working today. They very much were of the gutter, even though I think at the same time I love these films and some of the filmmakers who made them were really great filmmakers in their way.
Yeah, sensationalist and popular never really wins the accolades. That's the problem. But talk to me a little bit, Gary, about the way in which, because you mentioned how it influenced Hollywood and influenced mainstream films. So Close Encounters came, and even in the 80s, you can see the fingerprints of it on certain movies, even things like Ghostbusters and various other films which were playing around with the idea, not quite serious. But very quickly in the 1970s, on both sides of the Atlantic, it emptied itself very quickly onto the small screen and became a kind of staple both in Europe and in North America in terms of scheduling and television, and very popular television on both sides of the Atlantic. Was this simply television looking at its big brother in cinema, thinking there's money to be made here and we will do it?
Yes, I believe that's absolutely true to the extent that the major series in America during the period we're discussing, that I talk about in the book, the major series was called In Search of, and it had a wonderful ellipsis, dot, 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 In Search of, with Leonard Nimoy as on-camera host. And one week might be about ghosts, another week might be about voodoo, another week might be about alien encounters. It was on the air from 1976 to 82. It was the most popular of these series in the 20th century for television. And it was created by Alan Landsberg. When we last talked, we even mentioned Landsberg as one of the main Weirdumentary producers. And some of his were for theatrical release. Some of them, like his creation In Search of. I guess what I'm saying is not only do I agree with your question, but I think in some cases, like Alan Landsberg, it was the very same person, some very same people who were saying, this is working at the box office, let's transfer it to the small screen.
Absolutely. What do you make of the? I mean, on the last time we spoke, Gary, you talked quite amusingly about this sort of backdrop of the expert who was telling us about things, sometimes without any credentials to actually talk on these matters. But they were very canny, very smart in the people they used to front these shows. Here in the UK, our equivalent of In Search of was Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. Now, Arthur C. Clarke, as you know, writes fiction and indeed wrote 2001. But what his credentials were to talk about ESP or poltergeist, I mean, we'll leave it there. But what do you think? Was this just pure theatre that they were, in people's minds, they were linking Shatner, Nimoy, Rod Sterling with these rather strange topics to kind of play on somebody's already existing interest in mysterious other worlds?
Oh yes, I think that's the case. I mean, most of the people, and we could name even some other fascinating names. John Carradine did one of these. Burgess Meredith, who had been on Twilight Zone and Batman, the '60s series. Orson Welles himself, of course, had skyrocketed to fame in America by his faked War of the Worlds radio broadcast of 1938. And Wells ends up hosting two of these Weirdumentary, The Man Who Saw Tomorrow about Nostradamus, and one called The Late Great Planet Earth, which
Yes.
was based on a bestseller about apocalyptic end of times. So yes, the gravitas of some of these people, the gravitas of their voice, their presence, their long histories of association with moviegoers, and sometimes these very kinds of weird topics. It's interesting you mentioned Arthur C. Clarke's program because I do recall it well. It did end up getting to America later than you saw it, but we did get it. And I know in at least one episode, he does exactly what Orson Welles insisted on doing in The Man Who Saw Tomorrow, which was to throw in a line, force in a line of dialogue, saying something like, well, not every, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was similar for both of them. The dialogue was something along the lines of, not everybody believes these things, including your host. And Wells, taking the money for the show at a point when he needed it to appear in things like Weirdumentaries, but still insisting on a bit of a distance from the topic, or making clear I'm a skeptic or non-believer of it, even if I'm here chatting with you.
Do you think, this final question, Gary, do you think that somehow the Weirdumentaries of the 1970s were the kind of televisual equivalent of the carnival in the 1920s and 30s in the United States, where you'd turn up and you would see some weird, wonderful sight, which you didn't quite know whether it was true or not. And when you mention Orson Welles, I mean, he is one of cinema's greatest magicians, shall we put it like that? Do you think there was an element of that there was the tongue was firmly in the cheek of the people making this, and it was simply selling tickets at the 70s equivalent of the carnival?
I believe there's quite a bit of that there with the people who were on camera, the people who were writing and making the films, with some of the audience members enjoying the magic more than necessarily being true believers, although there were quite a few and remain quite a few of those. I think it definitely goes back to that. I think in America, we could even point back to the 19th century and P.T. Barnum
Hmm.
and his Museum of Curiosities, of which there were many, many imitators in America, dime museums, they were called. You'd see something crazy. Was it real? Was it fake? In the 19th century, P.T. Barnum made a fortune not only by displaying crazy objects, strange, weird subjects, but by even always again having that question mark available. So rather than saying this is completely always 100% true, Barnum's publicity was, well, maybe it's true. It's like the old wonderful exchange where somebody asks one person, person A says, "Is that a true story?" And person B responds, "Well, it's true. It is a story." Right? That kind of maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Barnum's idea was, well, I'll let you decide. And that kind of wonder and showmanship and carnival-esque quality, I think that very much pervades these films in the 1970s, even as companies like Sun Classic took them across country doing their own local publicity. It was very much a wonderful 1970s, the disco, the drugs, everything we think about the 1970s. It was a new form, definitely, of sideshow attraction.
And I think we probably both agree, Gary, thoroughly entertaining, whatever the truth of these things are. And we wouldn't be without them. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time together. It's been wonderful speaking to you all the way from Hollywood. You'll have to come back on again. There's so many topics. I was looking at your bibliography, so many topics that we could discuss with you. But for now, tell people where they can find out more about you and where they can pick up a copy of Weirdumentary.
Well, thank you very so much. I would love to make it back to visit with you again. This has been a great privilege and joy. Weirdumentary can be found at all great bookstores that we always love to support in today's world. And always, you can also find it at Amazon and the like online from the publisher Feral House. And so we do appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Gary, thank you for coming on Things Visible and Invisible.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Things Visible and Invisible. We're dedicated to uncovering phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality, from ancient enigmas and paranormal encounters to scientific anomalies and forgotten histories. If you enjoyed this journey into the mysterious and unexplained, please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the notification bell to stay updated on future explorations. Have a personal experience or story that aligns with our investigations? We'd love to hear from you. Visit our website at tvi.show and reach out through our contact form. While we can't feature every submission, we review them all, and your story might be featured in an upcoming episode. To support our continued investigations, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter or channel member. Your contributions make these explorations possible and give you access to exclusive content, early releases, and monthly behind-the-scenes discussions with our team. Don't forget to check out our merch store. We've got everything from TVI-branded t-shirts and hoodies to stickers and coffee mugs, perfect for showing your support while keeping the mysteries close. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time as we continue to explore the things visible and invisible.